Okay, let's check in on the. Oh, we're going to be covering her the whole time, but that's okay because Hasan isn't even putting her in his frame. So
the framing is so awful.
yeah. Now we're not covering her.
You didn't tell me we were going to do the Biden speech, but I guess it sort of tracks with what we've been doing.
Yeah. Well, it just came out, so I didn't tell you what. I didn't tell you. You don't know what's about to come. I didn't tell you what we're going to do today. This one is going to be a struggle session, though. To not pause and just. So I think I'm gonna lower him. I'm gonna lower him a bit, and I'm gonna get actually on my mic so I can just talk over him the entire time instead of pausing.
Yes.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Marianne Williamson's in the building. Here you go. She's running for president.
You didn't open the water for your guest, bro.
What an asshole.
On the Democratic ticket. And we have some questions.
Okay.
Yeah. The chat's already going crazy. They're very excited. Before we get started, I'm gonna really quickly do this. Okay, all right.
Oh my god, the shot composition is triggering me so bad,
dude. First
and
foremost, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
This is probably the weirdest interview that you've ever conducted, I suspect, because
she's been interviewed by Russell Brand,
to
so
a random person's house and then sit in front of their weird background and talk to them. As you can see, everyone in the.
I didn't even realize he had a picture of the Queen in the background.
Have you ever done one of these before?
Well, first of all, you're not a random weird person. Second of all, most of my adult life has been spent in Los Angeles, so this doesn't look that weird to me.
Okay, good.
The part about everybody on the thing, of course, is what it is.
Yeah. That part is definitely strange. You're in town. You're doing some media right now.
Yes.
I saw you not recently, but you a while back went on the Dave Rubin show to explain to him.
That was here, wasn't it?
Yeah. To explain to him important concepts such as systemic racism and how it exists. So that was pretty good. Apparently. Yeah. It's not even new to him. Hello. You can sit in here if you want. Right there. Yeah, we can barely hear her. Okay, I'm gonna try to see if I can boost your gain here, but you can just like yell a little bit or get a little bit closer to the microphone. Okay. This is the best we got, unfortunately.
It's appalling.
Anyway, today is probably going to be a little bit different than the normal interview that you get. In the normal interview.
But like these mics are fine if you're not going to move like Hasan does, but if you have to address the chat and the guest, then you need to position it somewhere else. And you shouldn't and this is not the ideal mic, but
everything you do, but I'm sure it'll be fine. We can talk about like different trends in culture, especially considering that you have a lot of prominence on TikTok. You're all over TikTok. You're more on TikTok than I am.
That's because she's a crystal mummy.
How do you feel about that?
I feel seen and heard by young people.
That's awful.
I understand it, actually. My message to them has been that they're not even 20th century people, and they shouldn't live their lives at the effect of bad economic ideas left over from the 20th century. So I feel seen and heard by them, but I think that's because they feel seen and heard by me.
Okay,
I hate that answer.
Cool.
I hate that so much.
Let's do this real quick.
They don't have an institutional memory of a time ever in their lives when it felt like government was on their side. And they feel that government policy, understandably, they feel this way because it's fact, does more to thwart than to support their own dreams for self-actualization and living the lives they want to live.
She's just having to fill in here because he's looking at the chat and didn't have a follow-up question at all.
He's a terrible interviewer.
Bro, you have to ask her why she's running for president. It's the first question.
This is going to be.
You're not looking at the guest. She's making. Look at that. She's looking right. Direct eye contact. You know why the chat couldn't hear her very well? Because you positioned her mic for her to be looking at the table.
Yes. This is going to be awful.
Pretty cool. Do you? I mean, why? Let's just start with why are you running? Like, what's your
God? How long into the video are we?
I'm just making sure my angle is as diagonal as possible.
Goal for running on the Democratic ticket?
Well, somebody has to say certain things. This country needs to start over. We need to end an aberrational chapter of neoliberalism in this country. We need to repudiate the.
I agree with her when she says somebody has to say these things, because of the things that she does say, and the fact that she's targeting young people. Like, I have no problem with this, really, especially considering that most of the people probably can't even vote that she's targeting, and she's just paying the Zoomer on her staff to cut TikToks, I guess.
Corporate tyranny that now owns our Congress, owns our government, and has its tentacles in every corner of our civilization. To me, that's what the Democratic Party should be saying.
Look at her.
And,
look at her.
Nobody's going to run for president.
She's
saying
talking.
I am.
Finally.
Okay.
Oh my God! Come on,
I mean,
dude.
that quite literally happened last time around with Joe Brandon. I mean, he and I guess 7 other candidates directly ran in opposition to Medicare for All at a time when this necessity was only being voiced by one candidate, Bernie Sanders. What are your has your perspective on Medicare for All and its viability changed over the years?
Yeah, I had a kind of amazing grace type of moment, because last time I thought, well, Medicare, Medicaid, we can get there. And I did have a moment when I sort of got it. Yeah, we need Medicare for all.
What was that for you? What was that moment of change?
I don't actually remember it. I don't remember when it was. I don't remember if it was during the campaign or after.
Forget me,
my phone is ringing.
Don't worry,
I'm
I just called Joe.
with this. I'm fine with this. Because, like, if you set the tone of how casual this is, like if she was like sitting down to do like a press thing and stuff, like, they would be like, oh, turn off your phones.
Different.
Joe Biden, Joe Brandon. This is not supposed to be a professional interview. Just don't show it to the camera. Make sure that it's
okay.
Yeah.
I'm turning off my phone. So.
Yeah. Oh, it's all good. Don't worry about it. It's just like, this is not supposed to be a professional interview by any means. This is the most professional I've been in a very long time, though.
Wow.
You're on good behavior.
I'm being on.
That's sad.
My best behavior. Yes. So there was another guy who ran on a campaign of trying to improve turnout for younger voters. And unfortunately, he's sitting right there on a cutout, but unfortunately that didn't come to fruition. Do you have any other opinions on how to mobilize younger voters?
Well, I had not made an effort to mobilize young voters. I mean, I'm grateful that they're responding, but I don't have any strategy like that. I'm seeking to tell the truth as I understand it. I want the American people of any age to have the option of a complete repudiation of this aberrational neoliberal chapter of American history. And we need to start over in this country. We need a new beginning. We need an emergency level transition from a dirty economy to a clean economy. We need to move from a war economy to a peace economy. And we need to push back against what is essentially a matrix of corporate tyranny. So to me, whether you're 80 years old or 18,
what does that mean?
She knows exactly where she is.
What does that mean?
It means she knows exactly who she's talking to.
Hang on. I'm saying specifically the wartime economy to the peace economy, because I was like, I had to stop, and I'm thinking in my head, I can't do this. I had to stop, and I was thinking in my head that we're not at war. And then I'm like, oh, I guess like somebody would be like, oh, Ukraine. I was like, so does that mean just not allowing like weapons to be sold to Ukraine to get into the peacetime economy? Are we in a wartime economy because of we're funding like a war with Ukraine to stop fascism and shit? Somebody's got to.
Your life or the life of your grandchildren. It's about the state of our democracy and possibly the state of our humanity. Even the habitability of the planet could be at risk. This is not a time to slow walk. It's not a time for incrementalism. It's not a time for endorsing someone that says the opposite of what I'm just saying because you think somehow the chess game of Washington will help you get there. It's not time for any of that. And if none of them are going to say it, I am. And I think there's a point to that too. They become locked in by the system. And I think it will take, and Cenk was saying that actually, it will take someone from outside, I think.
Yeah. What kind of mechanism for change do you think is necessary here beyond just the bully pulpit? Because as the president, potentially, you will have a lot of powers. What do you think some of the greatest hurdles will be in undermining,
bumping his
or
desk and
completely
making the camera shift,
neoliberal organization of the economy?
Well, first of all, every president, no matter who, is hoping for a House and Senate that is aligned with their thinking. So that will make a huge difference. But even if you don't, you do have the power of executive orders. You have the power of the appointments of heads of agencies. You can certainly get rid of the corporatists who head the agencies in too many cases, even if you can't quite bring in the problem solvers, depending on what they block and don't block. And you have the bully pulpit. And also, we all know that this needs to be an outside-inside strategy. So I think the revitalization of the labor movement, organized labor right now, is one of the biggest things going on. So one of the things they would really know that they had a partner in me, whether it has to do with beefing up the National Labor Relations Board, whether it has to do with the PRO Act. To me, that inside-outside elements would be fortified by our presidency.
So you're interested in beefing up the NLRB and giving more power to workers so they can unionize.
Yeah,
what do you think about the strikes that are currently going on all around us in Hollywood? I mean, you've spent.
I was on the picket line the other day.
Oh yeah, I saw. Yeah, that was great. What's your opinion on that as far as what's going on with the
course, well, there are two elements.
Oh, eye contact. Damn, we lost it.
Starbucks, it's the same with Amazon. It's the same with the grad workers, certain schools, etc. And that simply has to do with how baked into the cake it is that stockholders and CEOs and their stock dividends and their stock buybacks, this profound and really immoral transfer of wealth into the hands of a very tiny few, under the canard that they would create jobs. Of course, their business model is not job creation. Their business model is job elimination and worker exploitation. So it's very fantastic. The response of the first Gilded Age was the establishment of organized labor, and the response of the second Gilded Age.
Didn't you turn your phone off, lady?
It's repudiation. I think it's extremely important. Now, in addition to that, when I would do interviews, and
he's noticing it, and he's like trying to
writers. They were talking about things like a writer used to be hired to stay for the duration of the development of the script, right? And then they started doing this thing where we only need you for scene 1 and scene 3. So then that writer has to go work somewhere else to see if there's a scene 2 or scene 4 that he can work on, or she. And of course, this is also to the denigration of the product.
She raised the dramatic in her voice. He turned away more immediately when she did that.
Interesting.
Product itself. So that's first of all
eye contact.
the dignity and the living wage issue and the decency, all of that. We understand all of that. But with the SAG-AFTRA thing, this is this added element of AI. I mean,
bro, can you imagine talking to somebody for an hour like this, how she is, where you make zero eye contact? Like with AOC, she at least knows the medium and comes on and plays games, and like does Among Us and like does like meme Zoomer shit, right? And like and like in between games we'll do like political stuff, like, oh, we're gonna be on the working families line, make sure to vote down the working families line, talk about different races that is in the working families party, or which is the progressive party, but in New York it's the working families line. So like if you were actually like a creative person, you shouldn't even turn this into an interview. You should do something that fits your format more naturally, where you're both looking in the same direction, I think.
Yes, that's actually a great idea. Just do the same thing. React to videos.
Like
get her. No, seriously.
Like
get her.
That's going to be a side of a political candidate that nobody sees.
Yes. A more casual thing, because this is all talking points that she kind of talks about, but obviously she's in a different audience, so she's tailoring it to the audience. I think she's got a pretty good team behind her. So
yeah, we hear a bunch of them just left because she literally told them like, I'm not actually trying to become president, guys. Yeah. And they're like made like a post about it, like, can you believe this? We were trying to get this lady elected. We believed in her. And I'm like, bro, you are a loser.
It's extraordinary. You could take that they make you sign away in perpetuity your image that they could use in another movie. No, it's terrible. And I think Fran Drescher is doing a bang-up job, and I think she's making it clear.
Yeah, go the nanny.
During the last campaign, Andrew Yang had written a book, The War on Normal People. And that was the first book that I read that actually I got it about the threat of AI. And I remember one of the things that he says in that book is, don't kid yourself. You might think you have a job where only you could do it. I mean, even like lawyers, they're talking about that now. Don't bother to go to law school because of all of that. So I think
but Andrew Yang's solutions were,
come on, bro.
Not
I knew it. You could tell it was eating him alive because he heard the word Andrew Yang.
Mm-hmm. As soon as it happened, it was like a twitch in his eye.
Yeah. So she doesn't know her audience that well because Andrew Yang has kind of shifted to he was kind of like the fringe candidate who was like on the outside, like who wasn't serious like her last time.
Yeah,
fairly great in my opinion.
Definitely. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm just talking about the whole issue of AI, and I think and fencing it in and realizing what a threat it represents, and not only to the issue of work, this could be bigger than that. So I think with SAG-AFTRA, particularly adding the AI issue, it's important for all of us. And I think that what people are realizing, what I hope people are realizing, people need to realize, is that don't think this doesn't apply to you if you don't work at Amazon. It doesn't apply to you if you're not a writer. It doesn't apply to you if you're not a barista. It applies to all of us whose lives have become, which is the vast majority of us, whose lives are at the effect of this vulture capitalism and what it has become in this country.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vulture capitalism. I like that.
No question prepared.
He was not
Yang
listening.
And unique candidates are outsiders. You yourself are an outsider.
Outside what?
Outside of the DC mouthpiece, corporate lobby
system
influence.
As it is, status quo that has taken us to where we are.
There's another person who claims to be. There's another person who claims to have outsider status, but of course,
she's just like, yeah, these are the words you should be using.
I don't know. That might just like because they may have called her an out. Like maybe that's a slander thing that they'll say. Like, oh, she's an outsider candidate. You know, it might be something like that where they talk down to her on like certain programs. So she may have been responding to that because it's outsider is more used like negatively than it is positively. I think so. She's like, yeah, what kind of outsider though?
From like a political lineage family. I'm of course talking about RFK Jr. What are your thoughts on his campaign so far?
There's one place where he and I agree, and it's the only place where I found that we agree. We certainly agree on the issue of agency.
Don't break the blood-brain barrier. Can you imagine?
She's not insane like him though. Like she knows that she had to dial her crystal mommy stuff in.
Yeah.
You know, government and corporate power and how basically that is a fascistic element. I certainly agree on that. On the other hand, I don't understand how that is married to his belief that, you know, as he says, he's a free market capitalism guy. I read the other day that his prescription for how we're going to handle climate change is with the discipline of the free market. So yeah, Bobby and I have a very different view.
Yeah, he went on Jordan Peterson's broadcast and agreed with him on that and said that, I mean, and Jordan Peterson is actually in the pocket of oil lobbyists and has channeled their misinformation in terms of climate change.
Yeah.
And for Robert Kennedy to go there and agree with him is pretty egregious, especially when considering that he has a pretty long career of defending environmental rights.
So are there receipts for that, or is he just saying that because he repeats the same talking points because he's an idiot?
Who?
Jordan Peterson.
I mean, yeah, dude, that podcast had to get banned. Like, it got taken offline. That podcast was nuts. You can see like clips of it a lot. Like you'll see it in the YouTube shorts and stuff. But like, I went back and tried to look for it. It's gone. They deleted it from the internet because like I think at one point they start talking about Psalms type, like, you know how recently how he is like COVID was designed by the Jews or something. it was like something like that. It was I think it was about like probably about gender stuff, and it was like genocidal rhetoric around that or something.
Yeah, I would imagine
it's a lot longer than I've been alive even. So very, very strange choice of words there. I don't know where he got that from. But so people are correctly pointing out that he's done a lot of weird things. I mean, he gained a lot more prominence in recent years through anti-vaxxer conspiracies, through those circles, QAnon.
Are you talking to the person next to you, or the microphone, or the wall, or your chat right now? She's over here. You're literally talking, dude.
And whatnot. Some of the writing that has been conducted on your campaign so far have also had a little bit of not necessarily claiming that you're an anti-vaxxer, but definitely there is some questions about that. What are your stances on vaccination?
Well, the thing I do agree on is that I don't think pharmaceutical companies, listen, I don't think that insurance companies should be dominating our
Crystals cure
whether or not we have
COVID.
health insurance. I don't think pharmaceutical companies should have the dominance they have. I don't think gun manufacturers or big oil or big chemical companies or big food companies or defense contractors should be dominating our policies. I think too.
Because they always say like big chemical, big oil, stuff like that. But she only said big oil, and then like after that it was big something company to make it sound less conspiratorial.
Often, obviously, the profits of pharmaceutical companies are placed before the actual health and well-being of the American people. In no other advanced democracy do they lack universal health care. So you take the top 5 pharmaceutical companies last year.
The question was about vaccines, honey.
Yeah, she's dodging it because she's a fucking
$80 billion.
weirdo.
Meanwhile, we have people rationing their insulin in this country. We have people who are putting GoFundMe pages on the internet to pay for life-saving operations for themselves and their loved ones. So no, I'm not a big fan. I mean, obviously there's profit and then there's profiteering. And I believe that there's a lot of profiteering going on the part of Big Pharma. And I think there's a healthy skepticism that all of us should have.
But in terms of vaccine science, it feels like, to me at least, and I'm the layman, I'm not very intelligent. It seems like the people that are supposed to be ensuring that every single person is inoculated have the science behind it seems sound to someone like myself.
And there's risk associated with every vaccine, and we know that.
Yeah. So overall, I feel as though it is an objective good. I mean, even Donald Trump with his Operation Warp Speed, this is one of the few instances where I feel like this was the government operating in a way that it was supposed to. And there was definitely negative consequences associated with that, but that wasn't necessarily vaccine injuries, but more so not allowing this vaccine IP to reach, poorer countries, shutting that off. Bill Gates got a lot of criticism, and people said, "Oh, he's trying to chip people," all the way, ranging from conspiracies all the way to like 5G waves, killing people or whatever. But the real thing that people should have been upset about in terms of Bill Gates's personal position on the vaccine was him stopping Oxford from releasing the patents and forcing the AstraZeneca vaccine to maintain its IP control, maintain its patent control, and the numerous amounts of misinformation that he spread in terms of how India was not capable.
I think she got out of it. She never actually gave a stance on if she's pro-vaccine or not.
Of creating an adequate vaccine, and therefore it would be devastating and would create more vaccine skepticism when India has.
And guess who filled that gap? Sinovac. And guess what vaccine has the highest instances of vaccine injuries? Sinovac. And guess where all of that went? The developing world. So if you really, that's the angle they should be taking. But Hasan is a full-out China supporter, so he probably supports Sinovac.
And is continuing to...
He's got the Chinese microchip.
To supply pretty much 75% of the Global South with their vaccinations.
I agree with that.
Do you feel like the profit incentive is what causes vaccine skepticism and other medical misinformation to thrive?
I think that there are two things we have to look at here. First of all, we have to have there's a certain kind of healthy skepticism, certainly. But at the same time, we have to have a general trust in our agencies, the institutional forces which are pillars within our society. We have gotten to the point now where the skepticism has become cynicism, and it is too much. The system is too saturated because we have to have enough trust in these agencies. Now, whether it's the CIA or the CDC, it's sort of the same thing. It's like, do we trust you people? So we have to look at the fact
Who you
with the
calling, you
CDC
people?
as well as others, to what extent did
She just said the CIA and the CDC.
I know.
did their behavior play a part in some of the distrust, not the unhealthy conspiratorial stuff, but some of the healthy questioning, like what was going on here. And I do believe that during COVID, there were people who, most of whom probably with the best of intentions, did not trust the American people to have a more honest conversation. And I think that transparency is always a good idea, because let people be smart enough to.
I'd say the only issue is that conversation, because of how conspiratorial it got to a point where it was just like, you can't talk about it unless it's correct information, because there was so much bullshit out there going around.
Yeah, but that's the powers that be taking speech and curtailing it, and then setting their own standards and being like, this is what's true, even though
but if there actually was like healthy in the healthy skepticism range and not the conspiratorial range, and that's the thing, is it's like what it's like, you could totally get to a point where it's like, okay, you're shutting down conspiracies, but you're allowing like the skepticism to go in between, right? And there was a great deal of that. It just amplified that they're censoring everything because of the conspiracies getting shut down and stuff.
To figure some things out for themselves. So I think there was.
And also, like, another thing is just like, it was very clear. They were very clear that like you're probably gonna get sick if you get the vaccine. You're gonna feel like shit after. And Elon Musk's entire vaccine hesitancy and conspiracy is based on how he felt bad when he got the vaccine.
Yeah. It's because
and they're like, how come nobody tells you? How come nobody tells you? First of all, they do. Literally, they do. When you go get it, they tell you right to your face.
Yeah.
Some ways in which some skepticism was almost stimulated by a lack of transparency. Yeah.
I mean, I think epidemiologists run a tightrope whenever they talk about any kind of prevention with respect to further spreading a virus. And yeah, I mean, there were certainly issues with the original communication and how it spread.
And it was a moment of panic.
There was definitely a lot of people that thought that, I mean, it was mostly fomite spread. I myself,
like when you have Donald Trump
alongside many others, thought that you were supposed to.
Donald Trump literally saying in February, the COVID-19 is the new Democrat hoax.
It definitely doesn't help.
Bro, it was like 2 months away from like complete like total destruction. Bro, like I remember day 3 when like Wagner mercenaries started showing up in China. And me being at the point where it's like, I didn't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist by amplifying how bad it was going to be. I'm like, no, you're probably just overreacting, bro. You're probably just overreacting. China's never had to import crowd control. It's never happened, you know?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Pretty wild.
Like wipe off your groceries and whatnot. But ultimately, I think that that, again, stems from their interest in being as protective as possible over a novel coronavirus that is, was ripping especially the elder population to shreds. Yeah. So I think I give them a lot more
I think
leeway with
as I said, the vast majority of them over there, I absolutely believe that's true. Absolutely, I agree with that.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily agree that it's more transparency that would stop, naysayers and people that have generated and have a genuine financial interest in spreading COVID misinformation, and then even farm their own alternative products. I don't think that would have stopped.
Can be true. Both can be true.
Okay. So. What else to talk about? So,
bro, you're 20 minutes in and you're already running out of questions. I was just gonna say, I bet you he cut that entire section out and labeled it as Hasan debates her on vaccine and called that a debate.
So that's
nothing's going on or anything.
No, there's a well, actually, there is a lot going on in the
Dude,
world.
That was another shit talk moment from her that he just didn't pick up on.
Yeah. But I do feel as though this has been a relatively less interesting cycle for the election. I think people were way more tuned in, and I say this only as like a media person, I guess, as much as I am not really a media person, but I analyze the way that at least my generation is looking at like elections now, and they do find Joe Biden to be old. They find him not to be a very inspirational figure. A lot of people are complaining about his age and whether he's...
So that was two of the same criticism is just old. Okay.
Old. Yeah.
Old.
Oh, he's old. And did you know he's old?
He's also got hairy legs.
And
they got blown in the
Party
sun.
Is completely shut off the like any kind of left-wing opposition to that, or any kind of person from running against them, even though I'm a firm believer that even if someone is not necessarily has a shot at winning, I think that healthy debate is good and has the capacity to maybe even shift the incumbent on certain positions. Bernie Sanders did that with Obama's second term.
What is she going to shift Biden's position on? She quotes FDR, he quotes FDR, she's pro-union, he's pro-union. Medicare for all? Is that the only thing that we're talking about?
I have no idea.
What actually is her positions and how are they different from Biden?
I think that was good. Do you feel as though the modern Democratic Party is losing the younger population of voters that feel like Joe Biden is not fulfilling his campaign promises?
Yeah, and I think that even what you just said was repeating their narrative. Even someone who doesn't have a shot at winning, the person.
She. That's the same thing where she was like, what kind of outsider?
Person who gives
she's
a
very
robust
good at
progressive
media
agenda
training
right now, offers a robust progressive agenda, is the person who is articulating what the majority of Americans want. The majority of Americans, both Democrats and Republicans, want universal health care.
That's not true.
The majority of Americans, both Democrat and Republican, want tuition-free college and tech school, paid family leave, a guaranteed living wage, etc.
Paid family leave, yes, for sure. And when we talk about majority, we have to be very careful. Are we talking about 51% here?
So they are so institutionally resistant to a robust conversation and allowing a person who is a real progressive to have that. So, every time we repeat that, that's just chopping their wood and carrying their water. So of course it's boring because they're saying, well, this can be just in a little corner over here. Of course, she's not serious, whereas really someone articulating progressive views right now is the only serious candidate, serious about climate change, serious about the war machine, serious about healthcare, serious about what is going on. That's what's serious. So yeah, it's boring because the real truth is being suppressed. But when I say the real conversation of what's actually happening in people's lives is being suppressed. But you know what it is? It's a fake boring. It's like when Martin Luther King talked about positive peace and negative peace. He said negative peace is where there's no outright conflict, but there's underlying tension and anxiety. You say it's boring, but that's just because underneath, what's rumbling underneath is people acquiescing, giving up, feeling numb, and this kind of emotional decline. And that's also one of the reasons why I feel young people are ready for something more and aren't buying into, well, she's a long shot or she's a...
How her voice came up there, where she's like shifting into the talking about how everyone's sad and depressed, and then a shift up into the emotion. Very good.
Just maybe she could move the conversation. This is their lives. And I think that those of us who are progressive need to say that. I don't care. Maybe you don't like me for whatever reason. Whatever. For these narratives that are spun, or kooky, wacky, whatever. Which is
Crystal Mummy.
I don't think there's anything kooky or wacky about 68,000 people dying every year from lack of health care, 18 million Americans unable to fulfill their prescriptions. Crystals in my book or in my home or in my lecture. So if people can't see through that,
I love crystals. I have
Good.
I don't know where they're at. I wanted to.
She's
ask
like,
you
where the
this,
crystals?
but you're not.
Where they at?
Well, it's sexism.
And also, like, she's not crazier than like the GOP establishment at this point. You know what I mean? Like, she's very normal compared to the GOP establishment.
That's why I do have the OP buff of being a dude, so they don't really. I don't get hit with that.
It, sir, dude.
Yeah, that's just But crystals are great. Okay, so I didn't realize. I mean, I thought that you were a crystal mommy is what people are calling you in a not bad way, in a good way.
Well, it
wasn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, well, but it has been used to minimize. Let's not kid ourselves.
Okay. All right. Well, I didn't.
You're crashing. You're crashing and burning, dude. You're crashing and burning, dude.
Well, I think they're pretty. I mean, I certainly think they're pretty.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, look, I'm honest. I had to say it, chat. I know chat is like, why did you say that to her? Well, I mean, like
It's good.
I've succumbed to the media narrative.
I'm a big girl. I can handle it. We can talk.
I've succumbed to the media narrative myself. Okay. So, I mean, there's more I want to talk about. So there's obviously a lot of issues, and you're very good at communicating some of these problems. But I think, and I'm not going to carry water for the DNC, the Democratic establishment, or Joe Biden here, but I think Joe Biden also did a relatively decent job communicating some of these problems when he was running.
She's now corrected her posture and turned herself directly to face him, right? And after he was like trying to eject, where he started panicking, she turned to him. She's taking a more reassuring posture.
Yeah.
In opposition to Donald Trump, but the Democrats consistently tell me that they're unable to overcome institutional hurdles. You said that you would need you would also need a favorable.
I'm gonna title this that Hasan versus Crystal Mommy.
It's perfect.
So some of the hurdles, for example, are the likes of Kirsten Sinema.
You are chopping wood and carrying water for them.
No, I have my opinion on how to deal with that sort of thing. I'm asking you how you would deal with it.
So,
yeah.
For instance, you said that the president was very good at articulating this before he ran, and even to some extent while he's there. So let's take two examples. One was he said he would raise the minimum wage. Still at $7.25 an hour. We have 1/3 of America's workers who live on less than $15 an hour. Half of them cannot find a place to live. In most major cities, a living wage is $24 to $25
ban foreign
an
investment.
hour. So the president achieved that for federal workers. Great. And then he wanted to put it in the COVID.
He's not going to take a non-populist position, Jack.
Relief bill.
This is
because
to
that
sell
would
a book.
actually do something.
The parliament.
She's not trying to win. She's trying to sell a book. She's trying to sell a solution to people's sadness.
Now, let's
buy
be
crystals.
very clear here.
Buy amethysts.
Republicans do not
Get
let
an
something
opal.
like a parliamentarian stop them if they want something
Support
done.
the Australian
the
worker.
parliamentarian stood up to George Bush. George Bush fired the parliamentarian. So President Biden was, can't do it because of the parliamentarian. BS. Secondly, the president says, and he said when he was running, and he said since that.
Yes, Republicans constantly break the rules in establishments and stuff. Crazy that Joe Biden, the guy who said we're going to get things back to a rule-based system, is the one who's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to break these kinds of rules. I'm going to do things how they're supposed to be done through tradition.
Climate change is the existential threat to humanity. Absolutely. And he has put some healthy investments in green energy into the Inflation Reduction Act. The problem is he approved.
It's like stacking the Supreme Court. Biden threatened to do it, which kind of put the judges in line, right?
Yeah.
So Biden's threatened to do it, but you look at him now and he's like, I'm not going to stack the Supreme Court. You know why? Because it sets a precedent. The Supreme Court has never been in the two-party system. And now suddenly, because of Trump's appointees, they are. So, I mean, the worst we had before was Clarence Thomas. And like Ruth Bader Ginsburg was put on there. She wasn't put on there because she was like progressive or anything like that. Nobody knew her politics before she went on there. And also, it's not like she has perfect decisions either, you know?
approved the Willow Project, an $8 billion oil extraction project on the North Slopes of Alaska, which completely nullifies all the benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act in terms of the green energy investments there. Plus, he has given more oil drilling permits even than Trump did, plus the $858 billion defense budget, given that the defense establishment is the single largest institutional emitter of greenhouse gases. So the president is very, it's a playbook, which I'm sorry if this offends anyone. It started with Obama, and it's that the Democrats have perfected saying the right thing, saying what we want to hear. And it was just fine until you notice what they did. And then too many Democrats.
Not you, though.
No, of course. She's the outsider.
Not you. You're not the person who's perfected saying the right thing and what people want to hear, right? That's not you.
Democrats go, poor baby, he couldn't, and for excuses when it's something which if a Republican had done, we would have screamed bloody murder. And the president, and Kyrsten Sinema did not force the president to approve the Willow Project. And Joe Manchin did not force the president to not fire the parliamentarian, and so forth and so forth. And
I agree.
Good.
Your opinion on this is identical to mine.
Good.
I've said
I love people
damn near the same things. I think that as far as the IRA goes, I think that there was certainly a lot more that the Biden administration could have done. And I think that essentially the president has more power to influence legislation than just sitting back and offering a
so we can start killing the Protestants.
No, Mike, that's not what this is about. Cinema, and I think that as president, you would have powers to be able to persuade naysayers in your inside of your caucuses, inside of your Congress. Do you have any opinions on what you would do different?
Well, all of those things certainly that I just said.
Not just the Senate parliamentarian. I'm talking like, is there's beyond the because here's the thing, beyond the Senate parliamentarian hurdle that was basically self-placed.
That's just on one issue.
Yeah, there are even on that particular issue, the $15 minimum wage. There's always a rotating villain
more eye
in the
contact.
Democratic Party, a rotating villain.
Back and forth.
In the Obama administration, it
he even moved his mic.
But then before we are done with Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, let's say that they are reasonable. There's Bob Menendez. There's Maggie Hasan. There's so many other senators, and even depending on what the House of Representatives looks like, there could even be a caucus like the Problem Solvers Caucus, like the centrists
no matter who becomes president, he or she is hoping for a House and a Senate who is aligned with their agenda. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, it really makes me squirm the way we make excuses for Democratic presidents. Republicans don't do that. Republicans have more spine with they don't care if it's a Republican president. You didn't do it right. So I'm not interested. I think we need to hold our politicians more accountable, particularly as Democrats. So I'm not interested in this is why he didn't, and this is why he poor baby couldn't. I
have once again, I have my own opinions on how to deal with that. Right. I'm asking you what you think would be the best way to go about it.
And many things you can do executive orders, and many things it has to do with who you appoint as head of agencies. Let's give an example. Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin did not force President Biden to nominate as the Secretary of Defense a former board member at Raytheon. He's in there with it. I'm sorry. Okay. So there are many issues like that. The Biden administration could, if they chose, exercise marching rights to lower some drug prices.
Wait, you mean he gave appeasements to the two spoilers on the Democratic side to keep them pacified and contained?
So
wow, that's almost like
there are some ways in which Joe Manchin has stood in the way, or Kyrsten Sinema has stood in the way, and other places where the president has not just chosen to go there. Why? Because he basically is a corporatist Democratic elite establishment, and their playbook is we want to help people as much as we can on the periphery survive an unjust system. However, not so much that we actually challenge our corporate donors who make the return of all that suffering inevitable. Ever since Bill Clinton and the Democratic Leadership Council, the Democratic Party has been trying to have it both ways. And ultimately, you can't. The Democratic Party should stand for more than the amelioration of stress. The Democratic Party should stand for more than I'll help you survive an unjust system. The Democratic Party, and by the way, to win in 2024, is to stand for ending the injustice.
Okay. That's great. One other aspect of the injustice or institutional hurdles would also be the Supreme Court. What are your opinions on how to deal with the current 6-3 supermajority that seems almost permanent at this point because they're all very young as well? How would you deal with the Supreme Court if you became president?
I would have a very honest conversation with the American people. This is where the bully pulpit is helpful. If you look at something like Sheldon Whitehouse's book, this was well strategized corporate takeover of the Supreme Court. The way I look at it now, it's basically a rogue institution. We're supposed to have three co-equal branches of government, and they've made themselves into authorities in their mind, not only overriding the will of the people, but overriding the will of the executive, overriding the will of Congress. So first of all, obviously I join with those in Congress who are saying, there's no reason in the world why there are ethics rules for every other layer of the federal judiciary.
That's the thing you should say. I was like, don't say stacking. Talk about how there's no ethics committees because Clarence Thomas has a clear violation of ethics with him like banging that billionaire on it. You know, their gay sex getaways.
Yeah.
And I think we need to have a very serious conversation about term limits because, like you said, they're young. So
that's another one.
Barrett could have another 50 years of,
term limits for everyone.
Influence. And also, I would not be afraid, as Roosevelt was not afraid, to talk about packing the court. The Constitution does not say it has to be 9. Now, what happened with Roosevelt was once he threatened that, they pulled back a little bit.
How interesting.
That's what happened.
As president, I would not be pussyfooting around that issue. Now, I also understand those who say you could pack it, and then when the Republicans were in power, you could have the same problem. But there's just so much we can take. They are in a systematic trajectory of actually diminishing the rights of the American people.
I mean, it doesn't matter. Even if Republicans pack it back, considering that they already have packed it, so it would still. Yep, it would be in the short term, at least, if there was a democratic institution capable of administration capable of hacking the Supreme Court.
That's how I see it.
It would be a 4 years of some level of freedom and clawing back civil liberties.
And then it would come back way worse. Can you imagine imagine when the Supreme Court gets up to like 30 people?
It would just get rid of it at that point.
Or I'd have some spine. And as president, I would have some.
What are your opinions on immigration and how Joe Biden has handled immigration so far?
I think that Joe Biden is doing what he can within a system that is a basically false narrative. To me, the crisis at the border is not, they're all coming in. The crisis at the border, to me, is the humanitarian crisis experienced by these people.
That's true.
One of the things I would wish to do as president is to help this country look in the mirror.
She may not know this, but I'm not sure if you saw this, but like because of that, there's been like they rolled out those buoys, right? Did you see that? To stop them crossing the river? You didn't?
Oh, yes, I did. Yeah.
And there's like some sort of like barbed wire or something underneath them too in the water, right? So there's been border agents who have now basically defected and said that like because of the policies that they were told to enforce, they said we can't do that. And like one guy was talking about how he was told to turn them around and make them drowned, basically. Like in his words, that's what he said. You know, I'm sure nobody called him and said, drown him in the river.
Maybe somebody did.
Could be.
And if we do look in the mirror, one of the things we see is the egregious policies, American foreign policies in Latin America over the last few decades, many of which have contributed to the economic destabilization in many of these countries, which has made them vulnerable to all of these horrors. So that's number one. Number two, I think we should end the drug war. it's not going to fix everything, but I think we need to make some fundamental changes like this that would lessen the power of the cartels, which are causing all of this violence. And we need to do what Congress failed to do over the last few decades, which is provide much more.
Wait. Okay.
Legalize drugs.
No, but it's just that it's like the cartels aren't making people flee over the border. It's that the jobs are here.
Yeah.
Their jobs are here. We're holding their jobs here so we can exploit those workers. It has nothing to do with the cartel. The cartel don't even need to really be addressed. They're they're a medium-sized aspect of the greater problem that is immigration. And just addressing the cartel is not enough to make any significant changes across the board. The issue is how the job market works. We should be doing something that gives those workers rights as well, right? So they can have something where it shows that they've been a contract worker that allows them to get the paperwork easier to get over legally through a normal point of entry. So that, I mean, and you do it that way, and technically you are appeasing the GOP. You're not killing them, and they're still getting in, but they need their fucking crops worked anyway. They need the workers in there. But the thing is that it gives them rights, and that's the issue.
Yeah.
More opportunity for people, not only at the border, but many of whom have been living here for decades. We force people into the shadows. There are so many undocumented people in this country who do not want to be undocumented. Our immigration policies force it. Let's not forget, even Ronald Reagan gave amnesty to 6 million people.
That's a great line too. Always bring that up. That's a great one too.
I was growing up, all you had to do was go, walk down to the registry office. Look what's happening in Florida right now. A lot of people in Florida are unhappy with Ron DeSantis now. Like, where all our workers go because of so many undocumented people who are fleeing the state. So people who were traumatized by drug cartels under my administration would not be traumatized again at the border. You were talking about differences with.
Okay, I think that's a good line. If they're already coming here, if they're already seeking asylum, but it's more than Mexico. Venezuela's down there as well. If you say people who have already been traumatized that are fleeing asylum, they'll also not be traumatized at the border. That would be a little bit better. I'd leave the cartel rhetoric out of it, honestly. Don't even get into it. Anyway, let's talk about some headlines real quick. DOJ warns Texas against using buoys in Rio Grande. So that's DOJ. That's the U.S. state has already said something. You can't do this. Texas trooper told to push back migrants into the Rio Grande and ordered not to give water amid soaring temperatures. Mexico says Texan buoys in Rio Grande breach water treaty. New York Post, the conservative one. Mexico files complaint over Texas border control efforts. Texas plans floating barrier. That's a month ago. 4 migrants, including an infant, drowned in the Rio Grande over a 3-year period. That was 2 weeks ago before these buoys came in. So, pretty fucking bad.
Bobby Kennedy. On one hand, he talks about the humanitarian crisis. He talks about it talks about American foreign policy, but then he talks about how under his administration the border will be in.
Do you find it weird she's calling him Bobby? It suggests that they're a little bit more personal with each other.
Look what
maybe they hung out in the same Crystal Mommy groups in the past.
Yeah, maybe.
There's state-sponsored crime that goes down there. Separating
She's
children.
She's done a good job at like pulling his attention by amping up her hand gestures and stuff.
It's the state-sponsored crime. So I
think it's just that he has no confidence in himself whatsoever, and he's uncomfortable with human eye contact.
Yeah.
America needs to open its heart. Unless you are descended from enslaved people, or you are of an indigenous people, who the hell do you think you are? Who do we think we are? My grandparents came through Ellis Island, escaping oppression in Russia and Poland. And I think it is a sacred responsibility that we have as American citizens to honor what asylum means. To me, it's at the core. And also, just one last thing about that. Even statistically, undocumented workers and immigrants to this country do more to contribute to even to our economy than they do to take from it. And I'm really offended by all these false narratives that inform so much of that debate.
True. Speaking of enslaved peoples and what to do, you have, like I said, spoken about systemic racism. What are your thoughts on reparations?
Well, I'm the one who, in the last, I think that America has a debt to pay. After World War II, Germany paid $89 billion in reparations to Jewish organizations. You know, by the middle of the 20th century, it was an established principle of kind of international consensus that if one people has done an egregious wrong to another people, that financial remuneration made sense. And I also think if Martin Luther King had not died, I mean, we were on the path.
Here's a creative solution. Allow people, specifically write it in so it can't be people who have like 10% black in them or something like that. So allow people who are specifically African American to be able to directly sue the state if there's a history of slavery in their family. You take it into, you don't make it into everyone's just getting a check. You make people actually still have to go through an effort to do it. You know, that's a middle ground thing that could happen there, where you just make it so they can sue for their stuff.
Yeah, well, just those words. Even put it down to like generational trauma, even specifically lineage of slavery. Just do that, so it doesn't matter about the percentage. Just American.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you know how there's going to be like somebody like,
of course.
You know how like Steven Crowder likes to dress up as a woman to try and pretend that like you can just claim you're a woman and then like get all this stuff done, but people just think you're weird and want like to avoid you because you're weird, Steven Crowder. That type of thing. They're going to be like, they're going to do something where they can trace like a small percentage and like do an entire skit about how they're entitled to something.
The Voting Rights Act, we'd have the Civil
Rights.
Which,
you know, they could be. Like I said, you open it up to the court and like there's like a legal precedent that goes on with a lawsuit, which also means that certain people would get more than others.
Act, and I think that would have been the next leg of that stool. And I believe that a debt is owed. And I also think that my sense of the American people, and
either way, it's a conversation between the federal government,
is not that the
government itself,
the average
the U.S. government and black people. It's not a government. It's not a conversation for anyone who watches Fox News. You know,
have their way. The future generations will be more uninformed to the point of disinformed about the history. If you had been violently enslaving people for almost 250 years. And you add to that another 100 years of institutional oppression in the form of segregation and institutional, you owe people something. How can we even talk about this? And I think that a lot of white people might not realize, if you did through a program of reparations, if you were to close that wage gap, it would actually make the entire American economy something like $1.5 trillion larger. So on an economic level, it would actually help whites as well as blacks.
Okay. Hold on. Let me gather my thoughts real quick.
Oh, come on, dude.
I totally agree with you.
How do you not have a written list?
This is ridiculous.
This is a presidential candidate, whether it's like a serious thing or not.
I think that's great. Okay, let's talk about some, we agree on a lot of stuff, but let's talk about some stuff that we might not necessarily agree on.
Oh boy,
so
here we
go. Part where it'll get a little bit trickier.
Okay.
Couple things I have to address this. Obviously, there have been a lot of there's been a lot of writing in the media about possibly mistreatment of your campaign workers. So this is something that I'm sure you're aware of.
Oh, yeah.
Would you like to address what they've written and why they're writing this?
Why they're writing it. Gee, I can't even imagine. That's number one. Figure it out. Number two, if you are in a court of law, there are the rights of the accused.
This isn't even
if
his
you're
main
in a court
channel.
Of law, those who are accusing me, those who are saying she did this, she said that, would have to raise their right hand and under oath.
You want to know how I know it's not his main channel?
Mm.
He finally put it out himself an hour ago.
Oh my god. So I debated a presidential candidate, yeah.
And I was looking at how I was looking at his how all the people just re-upload his stuff and stuff. They all use the same font, the same style of thumbnail.
That's funny.
The same type of how they do the heading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And when they lob accusations at me, my counsel could cross-examine them, ask them some questions. My lawyer could look at certain evidence. Certain evidence could be shown to the judge and say, this is not legitimate, and the judge could decide whether or not it was even shown to the jury. So I say that it's like the old Simon and Garfunkel song, I would not be convicted by a jury of my peers. Am I a perfect person? No. And in the last campaign, I thought, okay, I would raise my voice. I said, God damn, fuck, shit, not at people. This one and the stories on this campaign.
Awesome.
There's been turnover as far as I understand.
Yeah, and you know what?
Managers.
Yeah, okay. So Ron DeSantis, big article about Ron DeSantis. And you know how his letting go of 6 people was contextualized? Man, he's a strong guy and he's redoing his campaign to make it right.
Interesting.
When you look at some of the things that have been done by and said about me by former campaign people in the campaign, given what was true, would you have wanted them working in your campaign? And some people are really wonderful people who it wasn't right for them or wasn't right for us. We don't have $6 million. We don't have $35 million. So we have to be very focused on where the money can be spent.
Okay. Another issue another thing that we would probably disagree on a little bit is maybe foreign policy, but especially as it pertains to Israel.
Okay.
God damn it. I was like, come on. Yes, foreign policy in Israel.
Okay.
So Israel is America's greatest ally, according to both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. I want to hear in your own words how you deviate away from the Democratic establishment.
That's not what they say. They say that they're the greatest ally in the region or the Middle East. They'll say that because that is true. They normally will say Britain as their greatest ally. You'll hear this with Bush talking about invasions and stuff. With one of our staunch allies, or it's like they're way more favorable towards Britain, believe it or not.
On that front.
I do deviate from the Democratic establishment quite a bit. First of all, I say I am Jewish and I am a lover of Israel. But there is at this point the furthest right government that there has ever been in Israel. The settlements are illegal. The occupation is illegal. And the blockade of Gaza is wrong. Now, that $3.8 billion in military aid, there is a memorandum of understanding. So that's there unless there is an act of Congress to pull that back until 2028. However, the president can, and as president...
Thanks, Obama.
Pardon? Yeah, thank you. That, as president, I would. Absolutely, and could, by the way, the power would be given me to insist that money not in any way be used in a way that transgresses human rights as we stand for them or purport to stand for them, and as we should stand for them with any ally.
So what are your boundaries as it pertains to Israel? Like, do you consider Israel to be an apartheid state, or is that a bridge too far? Do you think that criticisms of Israel from the likes of Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar are wrong or inconsistent? Because this is something that the Democratic Party, again, has claimed. They instead of addressing massacres happening in Jenin or anything of that nature, will turn around and seek to punish their own members in their own caucus, people that have, familial relationships of the oppressed people. And
I think that there are laws, there are certain laws and certain rules in Israel, which could legitimately be called apartheid laws. I do believe that it is legitimate that there be a safe haven for Jews. However, a country that is a safe haven for Jews should not be an unsafe place for others. And with the founding, the original ideal of Israel was that it would not be an unsafe place for others. And unfortunately, they're actually moving backwards at this point. And sometimes you tell your friends the truth. What Donald Trump did was he went with the far right on the issue of Israel. What what President Biden is doing, which the corporatist Democrats are doing, is hands off, all of that, fear of AIPAC, all of those things that we understand. And I would be very hands on, and I would be taking a stand for equally robust support on the part of the United States for both the security and the human rights of both peoples.
Okay. You say both people, so that's why I'm trying to still understand. The Palestinian population is, as you said, under conditions that could, by legal standard, be considered apartheid conditions. Are you willing to withhold what we consider aid, but is a defense contract?
As I just said to you, there is a memorandum of understanding. It would take an act of Congress to withhold the money until 2028. What I would do, what the president can do, is insist that that money not be used in anything having to do with settlements, anything having to do with the occupation, anything that in any way transgresses human rights as we in the United States describe them.
What is to do with what do we also do with the obvious? You already said it's illegal. The occupation is illegal, especially in West Bank. What is to be done with the already existing settler areas in the region?
We've got a problem. You've got a lot
from the American perspective too, because we are an incredibly important ally to Israel.
Here's the thing about that: it doesn't matter because it's not our country, regardless. We could try to mediate a process like we did with the peace accords and things like that, but likely those people will not be displaced. And I think that's really the main goal of the settlers right now. Well, obviously it's so far right now that there's legitimate people who want to extinguish the Palestinian state altogether. But I think kind of the main goal of the settlements of the West Bank for a while now has been, eventually it's going to get to the point where they actually stop us from doing this, but they're not going to be able to push back people who are already there.
Israel, obviously, and we do have negotiation power in the process.
What the U.S. president can and should do is make it clear that we believe, it's not even our belief, it is fact, those settlements are transgress against international law. You know, it's interesting because when Obama was at Tel Aviv University, he did give a speech in which it was clear that he understood what was really going on there. What the problem was actually effectuating some of the views that he himself articulated. I know people. I know them in Israel and Palestine, and I know people here who do represent a next generation consciousness about that area. And I would gather them, and I would seek to harness that kind of consciousness here in the United States for an entirely new conversation. And I would make it clear the leadership of Israel would know, and I think the leadership among the Palestinians would know as well, that the United States stands for something which is far more enlightened and fair and just than what is occurring now.
What do you think about our treatment of Cubans and Cuban population, Cuba as a country, and the embargo?
You know, it's so interesting. Batista lost. There was a revolution. Castro won. Get over it. That was a long time ago. And I think that, I lived through decades where the hold of Cubans who were so resentful because Batista, they had power.
Obama left office
already. Now they
literally
have
doing
younger
a speech
generations,
to Cubans,
their grandchildren and great grandchildren.
Like a whole, they were there asking a Q&A thing.
I think that a lot of Americans,
and they were scared about how the normalizations that were going forward were going to be erased. And he was like, "No, we're scared. Everything's going to be fine." They got erased.
Obama began to open it up.
Hey!
Then Trump closed it down, and this is one of the areas where we thought
that shit. It's crazy.
Biden would
reverse.
Yeah.
So no, open it up. Let people travel. Let people have economic relationships, live their lives, and be happy. And if that's where Cuba is, that's where Cuba is. Cuba gets to determine what's going on in Cuba.
Okay. Speaking of sanctions, obviously there are other countries that are sanctioned as well, including Iran, North Korea, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and also Russia. How do you? What are your opinions on the ongoing invasion of Ukraine and what America's role is in the conflict? And
I'm interested
what
again.
some solutions President Williamson would have.
I can't wait for this dodge, though, because we all know she's going to dodge here and talk about how the goal should be working towards peace, and she would be doing what would be required to end the war.
She's going to talk about appeasing Russia.
No, she's given this answer before. She's basically saying that she's going to do whatever it takes to get to the end of the war, meaning like if it has to be accelerated with arms and that gets them to the negotiating table, that's fine. It's like
than what Biden has done thus far. Do you agree with Biden on his handling of the invasion of Ukraine by Russian forces? Of course, I'm going to ask you about China as well in a second, but I want to hear about your thoughts on Russia first.
Well, first of all, because it's literally the news today, a place where I deeply disagree with the President Biden is on the use of cluster munitions. Those munitions are evil. They are obscene. They are illegal according to 122 nations, and they should be according to ours. So my heart is really broken, and we should not be using cluster bombs. And I think
you should follow. If this is your stance, you should follow this up. That if you're elected, you would make sure that the United States is a signatory to ban the munition,
and make sure that Russia stops using them too.
It's Russia has to sign the paper. Sure. Don't even talk.
But if
your stance, say that you're going to make the U.S. a signatory, and you're going to stress all signatories to eliminate the weapons altogether.
But if Russia is using them and Ukraine wants them, who the fuck's America to say?
I know that. I'm saying from her perspective.
No, I understand, but that's the sort of stance.
That's why you stress about the elimination. You say we stress for the elimination of all these weapons.
Yeah.
Americans need to realize what they mean, because they have repercussions after a war is over. Children, other innocent civilians killed by them. They don't all detonate at the time that they're dropped, and so forth. I will say this. No, of course, the United States does not have plans.
It's crazy that like everyone knows this now, because like the years that we spent because of them being used in Syria to try and get people to recognize what cluster munitions are. And now suddenly just one aid package to Ukraine, everyone is an expert on it and understands that it's killing children. It's like, I'm grateful that people finally know that cluster munitions are. It's more of like, I feel bad because it didn't come from like so many years of people dying in Yemen and Syria.
Yeah.
Yes, the United States was, pushing too far east with the whole Ukraine NATO thing. Yes, the United States. I should say we should not have had the Aegis missiles in Poland. However, this is where I differ from a lot of my friends. None of that to me justifies Vladimir Putin's
Fucking Aaron Mate will say the same thing, as that it's unjustified, but now it's good or something. They all say that. They all say nothing justifies it's bad. That's all the scapegoat answer is, like, invasion bad. You have to say that no matter what.
Sure.
Invasion of a sovereign country. And to me, if you're an anti-imperialist, you're an anti-imperialist if the U.S. does it. And to me, I'm an anti-imperialist if Putin does it. And I obviously we need a negotiated settlement. Obviously, the only ultimate possibility.
I'm just going to ignore that. The funny thing is, nobody brings up the Budapest Memorandum, which surprised me a lot, because it was literally signed by Russia and America, saying that nobody could exert any foreign power or invade or any of that sort of shit over certain countries including Ukraine, including Kazakhstan, including Belarus, I think was the other one.
Probably.
Something like that. And nobody bring this up, but they will always bring up the Minsk agreement, and they will always bring up NATO. It's just very, very strange to me, because these are two very important things that nobody talks about. Also, NATO doesn't force people to join. They ask, and they ask because Russia are fuckheads. So, like...
Ability is a negotiated settlement. Someone like the foreign minister of Denmark has said, let's get together, but it has to be not just Ukraine's allies. It's not a unipolar world anymore. It's a multipolar world. You got to get everybody. You got to have China. You got to have...
Great acknowledging that it is a polar world now, because it's not these BRICS people are like, oh, tomorrow it could be. It's still the U.S. ruling everything.
India, Brazil, and so forth.
She's well aware of the limitations of the U.S. government. It's very interesting.
About what it means to call a ceasefire. The United States does not have the power to just walk in there and say, hey, guys, stop.
Okay? Every time I say something, she follows it up.
If the West were simply to withhold all aid at this point, military aid, then the peace would not be the result. It would simply be the avenue by which Putin would crush Ukraine. So no, I'm not on with that.
Genocide,
I would like to see it
there
be
as
a
well.
negotiated settlement in which Ukraine
You
has
could definitely
any
say
Ukraine to
genocide.
negotiate.
Yeah, I think that yeah, I mean, I guess I do agree that if the United States would withhold all arms from Ukraine tomorrow, that this would be absolutely devastating for Ukraine. I don't disagree with that. Except due to that reality, I think that they have a lot more power in the negotiations process in terms of like issuing a terms of ceasefire than, you know.
But what does that look like? I don't understand quite what that would look like. To whom? We don't have the power to dictate that to Putin. Who are you saying we're dictating those terms to?
There's that's why you have to have China at the table as well. But
well,
ultimately,
no, you don't.
Went to Russia. We were hoping for that.
No, you fucking don't. Fuck China.
So she's also saying, yeah, I was hoping for that. That's fine too. Like more people at the negotiating table for a multi-nation settlement would be better technically, but
we've seen China's stance. China's entire stance is just
it's
Russia's
fine
repeated.
to give. That's fine because Russia will want the leverage. That's the whole point. Is that Ukraine in a negotiated settlement is still losing. Russia is gaining something that they have taken from Ukraine. That's the issue with the negotiated settlement.
Mm-hmm.
Zelensky said, hey, call me. We were all hoping, listen, I don't care who can come up with an answer to this. And we were hoping, and they actually ended up with these quite weak principles. So,
there was a 15-point plan negotiated in Turkey in the earlier version of the invasion that was that seemingly was a little bit more prosperous. Zelensky himself even conceded to pushing Crimea later down, to like a 15-year program for Crimea, where he would like have another democratic vote on how to best continue on with those negotiations. That all fell apart when Boris Johnson visited Ukraine, and I don't think that England has any sort of agency in this conversation beyond operating as a mouthpiece for the American State Department.
And then there's that interview with Naftali Bennett and so forth. So yeah, I mean, I don't think you have to excuse the United States to stand for the sovereignty of Ukraine.
Yeah, I'm just saying that like there was a peace negotiation with a 15-point plan. I
don't disagree with that.
That's Russia and Ukraine. You talked about multipolarity. So what is your opinion on the current administration dealing with China, and what would you do differently?
We need to walk back the Cold War talk. We need to completely shift the paradigm of foreign relations. You know, we skirt disaster. We skirt disaster when it comes to the environment. We skirt disaster when it comes to the economy. We skirt disaster when it comes to people's lives and healthcare. We skirt disaster when it comes to war. We absolutely must move from an oppositional adversarial role with other powers. Once again, like you and I both agreed, it's a multipolar world now. We're not the only superpower, and it's our own fault, by the way. It's our own fault. We squandered our moral authority. We squandered our military respect, and
so everyone agrees in the United States that like even the United States Department doesn't want to be like the absolute authority. They didn't want the Soviet Union to even collapse. Like there's the early period and then the Reagan era. Other than that, it was like, well, the Soviet Union exists. Who gives a shit?
Hey, we left a lot of openings for China to just walk right
in
there.
Nobody gave a shit about China until like recently when they started encroaching on these water rights. You know, nobody gave a shit.
Yeah,
they let them exist. They were just fine. You know,
I mean,
and they had a hell ton of influence.
Look at what they fucking did. They literally massacred people in the 90s. Nobody gave a fuck.
Yeah, nobody did anything. But you know why? Because he was opening it up, and they said, "Hey, you know, this is like a Robespierre quote, and it's something like it's about pragmatism and virtue, and basically it's like we can be humane after final victory." You know, where it's like, oh, sure, there's bad things happening now, but it's like it's more of a justify the means thing at the end. Is like how Robespierre viewed it when he was inflicting the Great Terror, and you know, in that way, looking at the infliction of terror becomes a neoliberal type value where you excuse the infliction of terror if you think that the end goal is going to support the unitarian development of the entire world, not just the First Nation.
severe.
I don't necessarily feel like it's a bad thing, to be fair.
No, I'm not even. Yeah, I mean, I hear that too when I say it's our fault. Like, no, I don't have a problem with what you just said. Okay, but the point is now we need to find a way to move to a collaborative paradigm. We need it in terms of nuclear war. We need it in terms of climate change, and we need it more and more every day in terms.
China's not going to collaborate on climate change.
We have to stop it with this. You know, I look at American foreign policy over the last 50 years.
But these people think that China is the leader in green energy, so they probably think that they will.
So immature, so lacking in wisdom. We must learn how to wage peace, and we must learn how.
That's her line too, the wage peace line. That's the first time she used it. They must have told her, it's like you're saying, wait. I don't remember she would open with that, and I was like, like both of us. I think she was in Piers Morgan, and we were like, oh, wage peace. That's kind of a good slogan. And I think I also said, no, she had an extended thing. I remember I said, shorten it to just wage peace. I think because she said something, a whole line of like, we need to wage peace.
Said something a bit
wage
more.
Peace, like how we wage war. It was something like that. It's wage peace. Everyone knows.
So you're in disagreement with the current foreign policy.
She didn't say that.
China that seemingly is bipartisan, and it's like xenophobia, that China is bad, evil.
Well, there have been some efforts when Yellen was there and Blinken. I mean, I think they're making.
They're not terrifying, but they're definitely evil.
Collaboration, which is necessary.
I mean, that's an ongoing thing, regardless of what American media or the State Department says. It's like inevitable that we are always going to collaborate with them. They're a massively valuable trade partner. It's more so just saber rattling, in my opinion.
Nobody's talking about not collaborating with them. What media?
Yeah, that's. You differ on that front, is what you're saying.
Differ
from not me. I'm saying from the current administration. I mean, because I feel like those conversations, as it pertains to trade, are ones that are not necessarily changing attitudes in any meaningful capacity. It's more so a reassurance. It's not dissimilar to America's opinion on China being a one state, a unified state with two separate systems. Whether it, with Taiwan, for example. Which is there's always been, since the Nixon era, the American attitude towards China has always been like, yeah, we're not gonna do anything. We are no longer recognizing Taiwan as real China.
You're so stupid.
It's just autonomous region, while also simultaneously giving arms to Taiwan.
Everyone knows. Everyone
trying
knows.
to massage any kind of interest that there may be in the public, and oftentimes this is not dissimilar to the Arab Spring. Real legitimate interest in emancipation or wanting to become independent, beefing up these different groups in a collaborative effort to utilize an area with historic conflict, while simultaneously claiming that you're on board with it due to trade relations.
What was that about? Is the Arab Springs? Is he saying that the Arab Springs were caused by the United States? Is that what he was like implying? I don't, when I edit this back, I'm gonna really be figuring out exactly what he meant there.
I feel like the trade relation stuff is, I got really convoluted there. The trade relation stuff is just the norm. That's always going to happen. But as far as dealing with China as a partner, it seems you are on board with seeing them as an equal.
You've said repeatedly that the economic relationship is ongoing. War with China would certainly interrupt that.
Yeah.
So, in order to protect the ongoing trajectory of economic relationships with China, which is an important collaboration,
You think that they do the recognition that Taiwan is China to protect the economic collaboration? Do you think that's why they do it? Do you think why they do it?
We need to make sure that we walk back from this crazy cowboy talk, including that about Taiwan.
Okay. All right. Well, we that about does it, because
what crazy talk. Joe Biden said that he would do something. Nobody else has done anything. All right. Break time.
He's so stupid.
That one wasn't great. Probably the last time we'll look at her, because we've done so much of her. Plus, she's really not that agitated.
No.
You know what I mean? All right, chinchillas.